Hello and welcome everybody to today's video. We're going to be doing a diagnostic of the F1 games, sort of some of the problems that were around in F1 2018 and some of the things that I hope for the future. I know that 2019 at this point it's already packaged, finished, about to be released. So a lot of these gripes they may be addressed in the next game, maybe not. We'll have to see when it comes out. Some of this video might be obsolete at the time of release because they do address some of these issues, but they're mostly issues that I think are going to be solved in the next, let's say, 5 years. Some of these things, I know it's difficult and I know it's not easy, and we kind of complain about these games as though, you know, it's easy, why don't you just fix this? But to do an online racing game like this, especially in the vein of Formula One, is a very difficult task, and I think Codemasters has done a really good job. We're going to start the video talking about the online portion of the game, and I want to kind of cut that down a little bit in length. I know that a lot of the other F1 YouTubers have done things along the same lines, and they've waxed poetic about the problems with the online. So I'm going to mention some of them, but I'm not going to really dive too deep into them because at this point, I'm sure if you're stumbling across a video that's this dedicated to F1, that you probably watched some of the other videos and you probably played the game and know some of the problems. So I don't need to go on for 20 minutes about illegal overtakes, though it is an issue. And another thing that I want to mention is that I'm not going to be talking about a lot of the one-off game modes like the championship, event, time trial. Those things are all pretty self-explanatory. Most people, if they're playing the game for a long period of time, will be playing either career or the online portion of the game. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. So we're going to start off talking about the online gameplay portion, and we're going to start off with the corner cutting stringency. So one of the biggest issues that I have with the corner cutting stringency is the qualifying is ridiculously harsh. I understand that you kind of have to do an all or nothing approach. It's hard for the game to differentiate what is and isn't an illegal extension of track limits, but the actual definition is leaving the track to gain an advantage. If you go wide and you've missed your braking point, you've lost probably a whole second at that point. Why should the lap be invalidated? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand you don't want people flying through S sections just making it a straight line, but the understeer out wide and then getting the corner cut for being on the very, very far extension of the track, way off the racing line, already losing time. It just doesn't make any sense. And I also think that they need to address the corner cutting penalties when fighting with other vehicles on the track. It's very difficult when you get pushed out wide to maintain the track limits, and I've actually attached an example clip from the drivers meeting in Monaco 2017. It's an interaction between the late great Charlie Whiting and Felipe Massa regarding an incident between Hamilton and Vettel at the preceding race weekend, where Hamilton had been pushed off through the first chicane and didn't go all the way around the far bollard like we'd seen Grosjean do a couple times in this year's Spanish Grand Prix. And it just shows you the discussion between two guys that really know what they're talking about the ability to maintain track limits and the penalty system if you're pushed out wide. So I'm going to play that video here now, and then I'll discuss it a little bit after.
Gentlemen, good evening. First of all, anything you have from Spain, from Spanish Grand Prix, anything you want to discuss?
You say if we were missing turn 2, we had to go behind one.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
What do you make of the situation better Hamilton?
Well, the interesting point there was very close, because what the notes that I wrote said was if you go over the bumps, if you touch those two bumps across, then you have to go around the bollard. Lewis didn't quite hit the bumps, just missed them. I think it means that we need to look a little more carefully at that, because it would have been silly. I think the question that you asked, what Lewis did was absolutely in accordance with the notes that we sent out. He didn't go over the bump, he just missed it. But if he had gone over the bump, what I'm saying is that if he put one wheel on it, it would have seemed a little harsh to have to go all the way around it.
I think it's two ways of looking what's happening. I mean, in the Lewis case, he was fighting with another car, somebody touched him, even if he goes more. Yeah. I don't see why he needs to go completely to the left and pass into the cone. So if you see that the guy just missed the corner, he goes straight, he needs to pass there. So I think when you're fighting, he already lost the position. You go wide. Why he needs to,
No,
even if he goes more.
I completely agree with you, and I think that's what I meant when I said we should review what was asked at that briefing in Spain.
So there you can see, with the exception of Sebastian Vettel making a bit of a funny there, that even a brilliant mind like Charlie Whiting can get on the same page as a driver when they're talking about being pushed out wide, things like that. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with the penalty system. When you're scrapping with other cars, there needs to be a little bit of leniency. Even if there's a little bit of jostling, somebody cuts it a little bit. I understand it's hard for the computer to differentiate, but it is something that does affect the racing. And there's times where you just can't make a move because you know you're going to get pushed one way or the other and you're going to get an extension. Especially when you come across some hooligan who is a lapped marker and you can't get past him except to get a penalty. And funny, just as we're watching there, I get a extension penalty on the outside of the track. So we'll move on to safety and skill rating, and I think it was pretty good. It is definitely a good thing to introduce, especially the safety rating. I think that the way they went about it, it could have been a little cleaner. I know we have one guy in the races that we do in the group we have that has an S rating, and basically he had to do that by starting at the back. Basically he'll disqualify himself to get a better safety rating, because then he starts from the back, everybody plows into each other in turn 1, and he just drives through and doesn't have a contact penalty. So if people are having to do that to keep their safety rating up, I think something needs to be looked at there. And it's also going to lower your skill rating if you're constantly starting from the back and you're not going to always be able to fight your way up through the whole field. You're going to be finishing lower and your skill rating is going to get hurt. So while a lot of the guys we race with have a good skill rating, they may have a really horrible safety rating because they're always near the front and in the melee, and someone who has a really good safety rating may have a poor skill rating. So they need to balance that out a little bit. And I think part of that needs to be a punishment system. And I'm going to briefly touch on black flags. That'll come up again later. But I think that there needs to be a black flag system in place. There already is. You can get black flagged. I've seen it happen before. It's mostly for weird qualifying incidents. But they need to have more black flags. If someone plows through the whole field, they need to be black flagged. And if they accrue too many black flags, they need to be either given some type of period where they cannot play online, or they need to be put into another field of racing drivers that all have black flags, and then they can all crash each other out. And I think black flags would be a way of really denoting a player as someone who's not racing well. And don't hand them out willy-nilly. Obviously make it for the more severe and egregious issues, like if you hit 3 people severely in one race, get off the track. If you plow through the whole field on the start, get off the track. And don't punish every driver that makes contact because one guy is clearly at fault. I think if it's a black flag situation, the driver who is a victim and anybody around them should not be penalized. So if one guy plows through the entire field, let's say, he gets the black flag, even though you might get hit into other cars, you and those other cars should not be penalized for that. Because he got the black flag, it's that person's fault, and I think that that's only fair. If there's a little bit too much jostling, if it's like a small situation, just give it a warning or give it a small penalty. But I think for the more egregious things, there needs to be some type of black flag system. And the last thing, I can't do a video like this without illegal overtakes. I'm not going to spend too long on it. We all know the issues. There's a car parked on the side of the track or in the wall, and you get an illegal overtake on them for what reason? There's nothing like, are you going to wait, stop, get a coffee, wait for them to regain their track position?
That is Mika Hakkinen. He's disappeared. What has happened? Formula 1 event by a huge margin.
One espresso, please.
Yes, espresso.
Thank you. Yes?
Why did you leave the race?
I didn't. I'm still in it.
Mika, it's time to come back.
Usually, I'll just keep driving and take the penalty. I don't even slow down because how far back is that guy now? So that definitely an issue. So we're going to move on to the offline modes now. And for this, it's mostly just career. But this can spill over into potentially maybe like an online career. That would be something cool where you come up with a group of drivers, but for now this is all offline stuff. And the first and biggest one is movement of drivers and driver turnover over the years. And I understand this is an issue because of the way F1 is set up. It's not like the other major sports leagues. Everyone says, well, MLB, NHL, NBA, Madden, they all do this. Why can't you? There needs to be a focus on getting that done. I think Liberty has to approach the teams and allow it, or at least attempt to have them allow it, because it's such a big thing and it adds so much immersion in the game to have like guys retire, new guys come in. You know, it would be a really cool thing to have, and they need to talk to the teams and the teams need to talk to the sponsors, because I understand there's a really difficult arrangement there. But I do know as well that in a lot of the other pro sports they have unions, and the unions can decide on behalf of the players and agree with the league and the teams in it as to how players can move and what the parameters are for games that are representing the major sports. So it's a little bit different, but maybe it's something like the drivers band together and really say we need this. At this point, I think that if Liberty wants to reach a younger generation, the F1 video games are probably one of the best ways to do that. They're fun and exciting and they appeal to that younger generation, and you don't want sort of a half-rate game compared to a FIFA or an NHL or a Madden, because they could just as easily play that and get a 20-year dynasty or be a pro career that really takes you on a journey. It's just a better experience, as opposed to having the same old rehashed race season over and over again. And it even has 2018 on the billboards or on the start of the race or in the car, so it's totally it takes you out of that immersion when you're supposed to be in 2024 and everything says 2018 season and you're, you know, however many seasons in. It hurts the immersion a little bit. The next thing that I want to talk about is Team Edition. And expansion drafts have been a massive thing in recent sports franchise games. They are an amazing way to add even more immersion, to give an extra level of interest and an extra opportunity for people to really seek enjoyment in the game. And this goes hand in hand with a potential team manager mode. And I know that this is around in every other game, just not F1, and there's even an F1 manager. Like, I think it's F1 Team Manager 2018. I've never played it, but I've seen people play it online and it looks like an interesting game. And it would be cool if you had something similar where, you know, you could take control of one of your cars if you wanted to, or you could just do the management side of things. And if you are able to add a whole new team or take control of an existing team, you get these different experiences where you're either working your way up from the bottom, or you're now the team principal at Ferrari and you're trying to make the strategy calls that they're having so much difficulty with. I think it could be so interesting, like however many hours you're training the pit crew and like making sure they're up to speed on their pit stops and stuff. And if you don't, you have a Haas situation where both your cars are out because the wheels aren't on properly. It would add such a cool element to the game, and it would make people who have that desire to organize things and manage things an extra outlet in the game and more time to spend in it. Another thing I would want to talk about is brand sponsor potential for drivers. Like, potentially, I know that they're putting some sort of fake brands on the cars that are coming out for online in the next game, that they have some new liveries that aren't actually real. And I think maybe if you had some, even if they were fake sponsors, that you could try to woo with your performances and move up to better and better sponsors, and those sponsors could help you land deals at better teams. Or if you're not doing well and you have a really good sponsor still, perhaps you get a second chance at a team like Williams or a McLaren because they're trying to make money and you bring in quite a bit of money. So I think that is an interesting thing that you could add to the game and really make you feel, when you're driving through your career mode, like you're actually progressing and not just a big skill tree with a bunch of engine upgrades. You're actually talking about sponsorships and talking about these things. And another thing that goes into that would be a relationship with an engine manufacturer. You know, maybe you've slagged off the Renaults and the McLarens, so Renault doesn't want to give you their engine. They don't want to talk with you. They don't want to deal with you. perhaps you've raced at Williams and then you worked your way up to Force India, you get a good relationship with an engine manufacturer like Mercedes, and if you have some sponsorships, it just makes you a little bit better at getting those seats if you want them. So brand sponsorship, relationship with engine manufacturer, definitely two things that would be really cool to have in your driver career mode, just to add a little extra element. And the last thing for the career mode is team orders and relationship with teammate. I know they have the stock rivalry built in where you're always a rival with your teammate, and that's cool, but I think that there could be more to it. I think you should have a rival on the grid, but there should be a special relationship with your teammate. And people have said before, like team orders, if you're a first driver, call the pits and tell them to tell your guy to hold them back, or try to pull a move on them to get them behind you. I think that could add a whole extra element. And maybe if you mistreat your teammate, he doesn't really like you, you start to have a contentious relationship, and it'd be really cool to see any kind of involvement that they could have with you and your teammate, and perhaps having long-lasting rivalries after you leave a team if you have like an Alonso Hamilton situation or something like that. So the last two things I would want to talk about, and these are just general game things. The first is crash physics and realism. I feel like the crashes were a lot more impressive in earlier games, and I know that at the beginning I was talking about black flags for crashes, and I still stand by that. I just think the crashes themselves could be more realistic in the sense that the cars should and could deteriorate much more impressively. Just looking back to the Spa accident last year where the side pods are opened up and there's spray everywhere and there's pieces coming off and you can see the whole chassis flex when the car lands. I think that could be done. It's not that far out of the realm of possibility. And I think it would add an extra element, especially in career mode when you have those accidents. You don't just have your wing fall off, your tire bump off. I think they could really do something with that and make the crash physics a little cooler. The last thing is the flags that are missing. As I mentioned before, the black flags are pretty important. I think those need to return, and those could be a helpful thing. And the yellow and orange flag. Now, they had these in earlier games from what I can see. I never played 2006 or anything, but watching some of the older gameplay on the YouTubes, I see that yellow and orange flag used to be in the game, and that denotes debris on track. I think that could be super helpful, especially for not running over front wings or debris on a street course, especially with the blind corners. But also if someone tracks gravel or grass onto the circuit, I'd like to see something where there's a little bit of a flag to show you that that's the case. So that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have a wonderful day. And if you have anything that you would want to add to the F1 games, make sure to leave it down below. I'll probably do a new one like this when the new game comes out, and I hope to see you all there.